Hey folks, Mr. Bowtie here. Keep banging home that subscribe button on your screen so that way you can stay up to date on all the great local sports coverage not found on TV or in a cheap web stream. And don't forget to hit me up on Twitter at Mr. Bowtie 1982. It's fast, it's free, and you're going to make my dogs think I'm the best person in the world. Thank you so much and enjoy the show.
Make some freaking noise. Wake up these damn neighbors back here. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Be happy to be out here. It's a blessing to be out here. Do y'all understand?
Yes, sir.
Let's pick this shit up and let's go. Get back in line. Hurry up.
Hurry up. On the hop. Hurry up.
It's awesome to be out here, to be at Cornerstone, and just seeing these young guys who loved football the way I loved it when I was in San Antonio. And I'm overwhelmed by the turnout from the coaches to the volunteers and obviously to the campers. I mean, I'm seeing so many guys that made it to the NFL, like Mike Jones, who went from Marshall High School to University of Texas, Jonas Kraft. I didn't even know some of these coaches were going to be out there. So it's pretty cool just to see the love and support here in San Antonio.
I was going to ask you, is this an ND Kalu camp or a Marshall High reunion?
It feels like a Northside ISD reunion with so many guys back from what we used to call 28-5A. I don't know what they call it now, but so many guys from the district that I played in, and now they're out here coaching and helping out.
Of course, you and Priest Holmes probably the biggest names off of those teams. A lot of these kids, none of them were around when you guys played in high school or the NFL. So what do you kind of teach them? Because some of them may have heard the names, but they don't really know the player or the person.
It's not about the name. You know, that's what we teach them. It's not about the name. They don't need to know us. All they need to know is that we've been through what they're trying to go through. So we've been through it. We understand what it takes to go from junior high to being successful in high school to college and beyond if you're so blessed. But the main thing is not about the names. We have some great guys who know this sport, and they're going to be teaching the technique and the fundamentals.
What are some of the things that y'all are going to teach the campers? Because, again, you guys played in a different era, so maybe some of the stuff may be new. Maybe some of the stuff is modified from what they're used to seeing in these days.
You know, even though some of the rules have changed in football, especially with defensive players, it's still the same. You know, if you're talking to defensive linemen, you're still going to teach swat and rip, swat and swim. If you're talking about offensive linemen, you're still going to teach them where their body should be when they're trying to block. So we're really going to focus on the fundamentals, and we're also going to try to implement some messages, you know, because these are some good men out here helping.
Listen, Marshall in 29-6A, a couple years ago, they got to the district title game. Had kind of a little bit of a struggle in athletics this past year, but I know you and Priest and all the guys stay up on it. What do you tell the Marshall community, even some of the Holmes community and some of those older school communities, that we know there's great athletes, it's just such a big district that it's hard for some of these teams to get into the playoffs? Just
remind them of the history. You know, that's all you can do, because like you mentioned, a lot of these guys, they don't know who ND is. They don't, they'll probably know Priest Holmes because he was such a bigger name, but they don't really know. So we just remind them, like, hey, if you're at Marshall, you need to walk out there with some Ram pride. If you're at Holmes, you need to remember the days of the Keith and Kerry Cash twins. Like, there's a lot of history there.
Definitely Ram pride here. We probably have over a dozen to 15 guys that I went to high school with. You're talking about early 90s, early 80s. We've got a good mixture of those guys coming out. I think it's a brotherhood at the end of the day, whether you're playing football on the collegiate level, high school level, or pro level. I think when it's time to give back to your community and give and pour into the kids here locally, I think all your guys will come out and come support it like we did today.
Yeah, it's so fascinating to see how guys like you and ND made it to the NFL. Some of these other guys just played in high school for the love of the game, but it's kind of still a brotherhood like you mentioned.
Absolutely, and the reason for that is because we've always made a point and an emphasis to reach back out into our communities. Growing up here locally and playing high school ball at John Marshall High School, it really taught me a lot. I met a lot of wonderful athletes and friends, and we do a really good job as far as going back into communities. One of the things that I pride myself is that I like to use my platform that I've gotten in the NFL as a springboard so that I can go back into the community and help where there's a need. And I think that for fitness, 60 minutes of fitness is always important for kids.
I'll get to Marshall in a second, but being out here to come to the camp today, none of these campers were alive when you and ND and the other guys were playing high school and the NFL, so they may know the names, but they don't know the person. What is it you want them to know about Priest Holmes, about ND Kalu, about the rest of these guys whose names maybe they've never heard of?
Well, the connection between the kids today that, as you had mentioned, they may not have been or been around actually when we were playing high school ball, but one thing that connects us is the fact that we've either played alongside one of their uncles, their dad, or someone within their family, which allows us, when we come back to San Antonio, we're almost embedded in this community because of that situation of playing at school. We've either played with their moms, their dads, their uncles, their aunts. There's some connection that connects us here to San Antonio, and I'm really proud about that as well. My parents was military, so that strong military presence that's here is a bond that I think will always be here and always keeps you connected if you come from San Antonio.
What's the thing you want these kids to take from this camp when they finish up?
Well, number one is endurance, sportsmanship, and then the biggest thing that we talk about is leadership, becoming a leader on the field and doing the right things the right way. And so we begin that with executing through our stretches and through our fundamentals that we will be doing while they rotate to the different stations. And so that leadership factor is really, really huge. It's good for them to see guys that have gone off and had careers, but the biggest thing is that for them to know that they can definitely believe, and they have guys here locally that have gone a certain distance in their professional career that still believes in them and wants them to be successful with that leadership.
Marshall had a tough athletic season last year in all their sports, but in 21, their football team surprised a lot of people, got to the district championship game, that Marshall Holmes game in 21, I was there. It felt like an old school playoff game because of all that stuff. I know ND was so excited. I know that had to make you feel excited with what Marshall was able to do back then. I know you guys still want to see Marshall get back to where they were back in the day too.
Well, the thing is that we all know that if you're in here in San Antonio, the game and the game of football has always gone outside of 1604. That's where a lot of the major powerhouse schools there are playing at now. You see a lot of great ball being played over at Steele, Reagan, even in Brandeis, which is right inside of 1604. But we do know that solid, 5 or 6 schools that when Indy and I were playing back in those Marshall days, your Holmes, your Clark, your Taft Raiders, your J high school J school too. But it's just the difference that over the years they've almost doubled the number of schools that are in our district, and I'm excited about the way that the game of football has gone out. I know that now it's changed. Instead of having to go through Houston to get to a championship, you got to go through Austin now. So it's got some really, really powerful statements that are being made, but we've got some really great kids, and it's a matter of us putting them on stage and letting them be seen, and then bringing them together so they can see what was some of the other talent that's here in the city.
Final question. We know Marshall, just like Holmes, a lot of these old schools, Lee, they don't get a lot of respect in the communities. They don't make the playoffs a lot in the sports, whether it's football or the Olympic sports. What advice do you give the Marshall kids just because they're representing the oldest high school in Northside? Yeah,
you got that right. And then like I had mentioned earlier, a bunch of the kids, like especially at least as far as my generation of parents that are now adults now and have kids, it almost seems like everybody's moved outside of 1604, but it doesn't matter. When you have the ability to have a great education, get in there and hit the books, and then also be a dominant player, they've just got to build on that. I know that Marshall's one of those schools that, we can say, as you said, one of the oldest schools now in the district, but it has the ability to attract some of the kids that, are still in that area, and they have an opportunity to play some really good football.